people would be more comfortable with a 90-second limit? I mean, you've been under a minute on a lot of questions too, but would you be happy with a 90-second limit or stick to 60? You're fine, okay. Next question.
I was glad to hear you mention homelessness in your intro, and I now work on a regional level on the issues of housing and community development. And in the states of Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Vermont this year, they actually put money into their state budgets for housing. And one of the reasons this happened is they don't just have one or two. They go 3, 4 people, 5 people deep in their legislatures who actually care about this issue. So I'm just wondering what you might do around this issue. Everyone hears about foreclosure, but we still have a shortage in this community. And the recent reports in Boston about the increase in rents, it's now $2,500 for a 2-bedroom average rent in Boston. We're going to feel that impact eventually, maybe not in the next year or two. So what are you going to, what do you see as housing issues, and would you be an advocate up there?
Yeah.
Okay, this might be more of a second answer. Barbara, thank you so much for that question. I mean, to me, it's just a little background. My mother was a realtor, my father was a contractor, and I went off to graduate school thinking I would do housing policy, and I just kind of got into welfare and healthcare policy instead. But I think that when we look at that's a whole part of the economic picture for us in Rhode Island is about having affordable housing, and that is something that is fundamentally important. I think it's kind of tied into all the other things in Rhode Island, like Rhode Island Works, and in terms of the base payments of that and sort of other services that we give to our most vulnerable populations in Rhode Island, and recognizing that when Rhode Island Works is only paying an amount that is not changed since 1978, and this is sort of the cash that we provide to the lowest income Rhode Islanders to try and help them not fall completely through the cracks. When that money is, when we realize that it requires 4 families living together in order to make one rent payment on a 2-bedroom apartment, there's obviously a larger problem about systemic poverty in our state, and housing is a component of that.
So Barbara, the answer is absolutely yes in terms of being an advocate, and we're grateful and lucky that we have you in our state who has this area of expertise, and that there are other states around that have done some things that we haven't yet done. So I think it would be critical to learn from you about what's next. Also, I just see the economy and education and housing and homelessness, I mean, they're so interconnected. And so I think we need to bolster our economy, get people back to work, and then also simultaneously, as Gayle said, take care of the folks. I mean, homelessness is just a basic, owning or living in housing, affordable housing is just a basic right. So absolutely yes, in terms of advocacy.
Sam?
After the Supreme Court said that the General Assembly was now subject to the Code of Ethics, Rhode Island House was ready to make the General Assembly subject, but the Rhode Island Senate stopped it. It seems clear that the leadership of the Rhode Island Senate does not want to see the ethics code come to the General Assembly. Where does that issue fit on your priority list, other things you're talking about, and would you be willing to cross leadership to advance that one?
Yes, I would be willing to cross leadership for that one. I think the evidence is pretty clear, if you picked up the paper this year at all, that the Senate and House, the legislature, policing themselves did not work so well. So I think that having an outside, ethics commission that could do some of that would be absolutely a fundamental piece that I would prioritize.
Yeah.
See, that could have been a yes or no question.
We're going to rework your question.
Yes, absolutely. It's when we lose confidence in our elected officials, we create it's a harder lift for all of us to get our state going forward. I mean, when we can't feel like we have that confidence in who we've elected to make those decisions, then it will make it harder for us to build our economy and move forward. So yes, absolutely, I think that we should have advocates. Please.
All of you have put forward a fairly standard liberal agenda. Now I want to know, how are you going to possibly save money in the state and combine it with your progressive agenda?
Oh, it's me. Well, I absolutely do have a liberal agenda, if you want to call it that. Because to me, I think one of the important roles, particularly the legislators on the east side, have served as being a voice for progressive values that has not existed in, or does exist in other parts of the state, but there's less of it. So let me just put it that way. And hopefully this year there are some really interesting races, and maybe we'll see a little bit more of that happening. I think as Chris had talked about in terms of looking at the tax code, we look at that and we think, okay, is there a way in order to generate money in that way? I think it's also about building our economy back up and creating more revenues and putting more people back to work, so that we are building the money coming in, what's being taxed, and so that can build our whole state back up.
Yeah, I would also, claim the progressive mantle as well, and I think progressive means progress and being willing and able to stand up and show bold leadership around a number of issues, including a social agenda, but as well as an economic agenda. And I would agree very much that until or unless we bolster our economy, we can't take care of folks and actually move forward with that agenda in terms of caring for folks who are homeless, developmentally disabled population. So I think it's a critical part if we don't get our economic house in order and really bolster our economy, create jobs, get people back to work, and change our education system. In fact, we can't do the other. We won't be able to sustain the other agenda items and the other issues that fundamentally are so important to Rhode Islanders, and particularly Eastsiders.
I'm going to follow up on that question. What are you going to do to, how are you going to raise revenues? I had a lot of generalities, but you haven't said really much about where you're going to raise money. So can you follow up, give some more specifics to this gentleman's question? Either of you?
Sure. I think for me, I've met with, the last few weeks, I've been meeting with business owners, entrepreneurs, and business leaders to say, what is it that you need? And part of it is around the business climate. Again, we're 50th. So I think we need to break down the silos. I think we need to cut red tape, and we just have to be competitive. Infrastructure, both hard infrastructure, bridges and roads, as well as soft infrastructure, technology, and communication devices. We have to be competitive, and we have to be competitive educationally too. Somebody mentioned to me, an entrepreneur I met with the other day, he said, well, you have to talk about the $25,000 tax per child. And he said it 3 times, and I'm like, okay, I have no idea what you're talking about now. And he said, private school. That's for Eastsiders, the $25,000 tax is every child, you have your business leader, you come in and you have to pay an additional $25,000 per child, if you choose that route in terms of schooling. And again, it doesn't make for a climate or a culture here that, and I think we just have to talk about it. We have to go up and talk about and set an agenda and show leadership about the economy. I think it's critical.
Yeah.
But I don't have all the answers. I wish I did. I would probably really be very wealthy. But I think it's about making those investments in small businesses certainly to start off with. There are plenty of, for instance, if you just take small businesses that are owned by women in Rhode Island, which there are quite a lot of, and they actually don't meet. Only 98% of venture capital goes to male-owned businesses. It's just an example. So you're not even meeting all of the needs of everybody who's currently a small business owner in the state. I think that there are innovative ideas. Rhode Island Foundation is hosting this innovation fair in a couple of weeks to try and get more creative business thought out there to figure out how we can actually deal with our economic crisis. And to me, it's really about going to thought leaders who have done the research, have really put together a plan that is going to make sense. And certainly infrastructure has been shown as as the Obama administration put money into infrastructure. Anytime you put money into infrastructure, those create real